Welcome to the channel by Chris. My name is Chris, and in today's video, I'm going to share with you why I believe authenticity is actually the key to life that everybody's looking for. And if your journey's been similar to mine, it's been this thing of like understanding authenticity is actually the hardest thing in this universe to create within the self. And on my own journey, what I realized was along the way, I was highly conditioned on what I thought was my beliefs, but then I found out that they were actually beliefs that were projected on me. And as a child, I had this choice of believing it and accepting it or rejecting it and denying it. And everything I believed and accepted became my belief. And then when I hit about 27, I hit this point where I was like, I'm doing everything everybody told me to do, but it doesn't feel right. And it actually caused the biggest breakdown in my life, which led me to the greatest breakthrough. And 8 years ago, I started this journey in business. And today what I'm going to show you is how I mapped this out as a key of my journey over the past 8 years to truly identify who I am, what I came to do, how I operate in this reality, and how it will bring me success. And speaking of the word success, I most recently found out and came to this conclusion after breath work that success isn't an outcome. It doesn't take work to get there. That's external. It's all internal. And whenever you do all the inner work, you start to see the outer reality respond. But you have to hold the tension. There's gaps of when you make the shift. If you go back because it feels comfortable, you're going to miss the boat. But if you continually dive into the soul and the methods I'm about to show you, you will endlessly discover the truest parts of yourself. But you have to be willing to let go of what you really weren't and be open to who you really are. And before we go too far, I mapped out this whole thing. I'll give you guys the key here if you guys want to pause the video. It is sick. Wait, get my face out of it. There we go. It is sick. So we'll pull that back. So we're going to go through this. And I'm a very non-linear guy. So I made it linear on here as I could to help you follow this video with ease. So let's get started. Number one is authenticity. What it will heal in you is your health, your wealth, your career, your love life, and your destiny. It unifies all those together. And that is essentially the result of my map, which I don't know where my other marker went, but we're just going to draw an arrow back because it's kind of like a design thinking principle where you discover, design, do. And that is discover is like get curious about something, discover it and be like, there's a problem here. And that's like yourself is like, if you're not the true self, you're like, I'm discovering parts of me that people told me were myself, but they're not me. So now you design a process. And for me, I've mapped this out as metaphysics, which we'll get to in a minute. But it's like that was the process I fell into intuitively. And it started with astrology, then went to numerology, and then went to human design. And then start learning and taking all this theory and put it into practice and test it. And when you test it, you're going to fail. And that's a part of the process. And then you go right back to discover, design, and do. Discover, design, do. That is literally all we're doing here in reality is the design thinking process. Discover, design, do. And when you do, you test, you get failures. And then you go back to discover, design, do, which is refinement. Do it again. And you complete this process. But overall, as somebody who was, and I've lived a very eclectic life. So I got a bio degree. And then I got a nursing degree. And when I was in nursing school, I was like, this isn't it. But shoot, we've already spent 4 years doing that. Let's keep going. And then when I was in nursing, I got really sick in my stomach. I had stomach ulcers. I had anxiety, depression. It was almost like my soul was like, you're learning this, but it isn't for you. And I tried to get comfortable in it. And I had everything. I had a girlfriend. I had an apartment. I had the job. I had a paycheck. I had everything. But nothing felt right. And it felt like everything was missing. So I got curious and dove into entrepreneurship. And then along the way was also in graduate school to become a nurse practitioner. The further I went in there, the more problems appeared in my life. And I'm like, God, I'm following what you're telling me to do. But it wasn't what God was telling me to do. It was what my parents told me to do and what they projected on me my whole life. And it brought me to this point where I was like, this isn't my life. But I'd invested so much time and energy into it. My health issues were raising. My life was decreasing. And I started to get confused. And then I started building a website. I started building a business. And I didn't know what I was doing, but it felt right. And then the more I leaned into that, I was like, entrepreneurship is my thing. And I didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. But then along the way, through my astrology, through my numerology, this E word, entrepreneur, kept popping up. And I was like, what the hell is an entrepreneur? And then I realized I was an entrepreneur. I was already doing entrepreneurial things. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was, right? But as soon as the divine intervention came in, I ended up failing a drug test, which I actually was thrilled about because I saw it as my exit from nursing. And then I ended up resigning from nursing. They struck my license and I said, take it. I don't want it. I don't want a plan B. I'm going plan A, which was entrepreneurship. And we started a business called Alpha Omega Fitness Network. That would fail. But through that download, I got the same download this year, which is 2018. So January 24th, 2018, I got the exact same download as I got December 13th at about 3 a.m. in Austin, Texas. But the first time I was like, I got it, let's build it. And I failed epically. But this time I built it precisely. And it's so cool because the first time I had none of the skills, knowledge, or wisdom, and I had to remember it. I had to unlock it. And through unlocking it and actually getting out of nursing and jumping fully into entrepreneurship, my stomach problems faded away. My anxiety and depression, they were non-existent. I was on Lexapro and Adderall and Vyvanse, and magically they just fell off. I didn't need them anymore. I didn't want them anymore. And it wasn't a decision I had to make. I just naturally stopped taking them and went through the shocks of the SSRIs, but made it out. And also when I was in the SSRIs and was starting to wean them off, I started intuitive healing. And in doing intuitive healing, it's almost like it pushed those out because I healed aspects of myself in learning about those aspects of myself, right? And this is such a cool process. And before we get lost, you see my non-linearness coming in. But essentially what I'm sharing is like I was in a career that wasn't for me. My health was declining, chaos was increasing. When I switched, it flipped. And it wasn't like I was on heaven on earth. I've created my own Eden. That is the right angle across the Eden I mentioned earlier in the video that I carry in human design. And I've created Eden in my apartment. I've created it in my environment in Austin, Texas. Anywhere I go, Eden follows me and people can feel it. You can probably feel it in this video too, because you probably don't know me, but you're like, this guy is speaking wisdom. And if not, please bounce. I don't want you here. So then what happens with authenticity is my health increased, my wealth increased. I was making more in my third year in entrepreneurship than I did in my third year in nursing. And this is something that I self-taught because when I got into entrepreneurship, I started video, photo, editing, and then would scale it to an agency working with the NFL, Premier League, T-Mobile for Business, and some other big brands. And when I was like, yay, I made it, I was like, I don't want to do this shit anymore. I keep burning out. It must not be for me, but it was for me at one point. But then it was starting to, my health was declining and chaos was increasing and the wealth actually started to go down. And I was like, damn, time to shift again. And we did. And then I came to Austin, Texas, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was observing and watching. And then everything around me started to unify. For the first time in my life, everybody around me was smarter than I was. Everybody around me was doing bigger things. And for the first time in my life, I felt small. Normally, I was the one educating and teaching and sharing these innovative ideas. And in Kansas City, none of those innovative ideas were landing. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. Found my way to Austin, Texas after ayahuasca showed me I'd move there. And ironically, 2 weeks before that, I came to Austin, Texas and was like, damn, I'd move here if I wasn't dating somebody. Well, I had took care of that. And for that, I was grateful, okay? And then in coming to Austin, Texas, all this shit unified, okay? And I mean, everything started to happen when that download came back in. And I got the download and I was like, this is it. This is what I came here to build. And once I build this, I'm getting into the space industry. And I know that. Mark this video here. When you see me on the moon and in space, deep space exploring, we documented it here first, okay? And then after that happened, I was like, man, my love of my life came in, right? And I've contacted her, but I haven't physically met her. And that's cool to document here. And then I feel like my destiny is right around the corner as I have Lilith in the 12th house Sagittarius returning. At the same time, I have Gemini and Mars in the 6th house returning. And Jupiter and Leo in the 7th house also returns all at the same time. And I think it's around July 25th, which will be cool. That's like 3 months away. Boom, this is gonna be dope, okay? Now, I shared all that through the authenticity part because it's important, because why would you listen to anything else in this video if I didn't share that? So now that you've kind of understood how I've created this authentic lifestyle, the coolest thing is happening is everything is magnetically attracting. I don't have to do anything but what feels right to me and what I want to do. And the people who weren't supposed to be in my life magically started falling off, and these new people keep attracting. And it's so funny because they keep attracting at Gold's Gym It's Gold Highlands in Austin. In the locker room around the same area, there's a portal, there's something. It is magical, right? Don't go there looking for it because you probably won't find it, but it's my specific spot in this reality that stuff happens, okay? Now we're gonna flip to the metaphysical aspect of all this, okay? Because this was the defining factor that essentially led me to my authenticity. And it started off with astrology. And I never was an astrology guy. I knew I was a Pisces. And then I was like, I'm a Pisces. I don't believe in that shit. Spiritual awakening happened January, January 24th, 2018. Magically knew astrology. Found out all this stuff about astrology. And I got curious about it. I leaned into it. And the more I read, I felt this resonating charge in my body of stuff that was for me. And then when I read stuff and it wasn't for me, I was like, I couldn't feel it. And I was like, let's not force it. But all these things are creating a charge. Let's practice them. And it was like, I was creative. I was intuitive. I'm an artist. I'm an inventor. And then I have a Capricorn rising and stellium in the first house with my ascendant, North Node, and then Uranus and Neptune conjunct. Very intuitive, all over the place, unpredictability. And I rise from nothing to something in this life. And I'm a natural leader, and that's an energy people feel. Then that essentially led me on this journey where I started learning all these aspects, and what I was reading was becoming real. I wasn't forcing it, but I was open to it. That happened at 11:11 on the timer, which then I leaned into numerology next, and I was like, okay, what is this life path 11, master number 11, the wounded healer, the master psychic? And then it was like, essentially, and those things were starting to create an overlap, and I was like, intuitive, creative, artist, 11, the wounded healer, the master psychic. Okay, there's an overlap. And 11 is also an entrepreneur. There's another overlap. And I was like, this stuff is all overlapping. And then next in my journey, and then, even I would find out Pinnacles. And for the first 34 years of my life, I was in a Pinnacle 9. For the next 20 or so, for my second and third Pinnacle, I'm in a Pinnacle 8. And then my last Pinnacle in life, starting at 52, I believe, is a 5. And all this will make sense because I went through my karmic healing with the 9. It is, service. It is solitude. It is all about the self. That was my karmic cleanse the first 34 years of my life. It was hard, but it opened the door to healing. And as I healed, it opened me up to my intuitive gifts. And as I got my gifts and then worked there, then it created this sense of that I was able to fully operate with all my gifts. Because for the first 34 years of my life, I knew I had gifts, but I didn't have confidence with those gifts, and they were very debilitating. It caused all this sense of like, is that my thought? Is it their thought? Whose thought is this? Does anybody else have this gift? And I remember as a kid, I remember closing my eyes and having a more psychedelic third eye than when I took LSD for the first time. And even when I closed my eyes with mushrooms, it is somewhat comparable, and it was phenomenal, right? But it essentially like that helped me understand my gifts and my talents. And then last, I'd find human design, where I was like, oh, I'm a projector. What's that? And I didn't know anything about human design. And then human design would be the thing that pulls it all together because it's the I Ching. It is the human genes, or the 64 gates of the gene keys. It is the astrology, numerology. It's the extended chakras, and it is Taoism, okay? And those are all aspects of what I do now, and I naturally found them without looking for them, okay? But in human design, first I found out I was a projector. Then it would come in piece by piece. Then I knew specifically I was a mental projector, and there's not a lot of information, and I found it, I lived it, I created it, I had trialed and errored it, okay? And this is dope. This is why I tell everybody you should use human design to identify all parts of self. And it was very healing, right? So then I learned I was a 2-4 line. So independent needs solitude for the gifts to come in, and then need a network to help share the gifts. And as a projector, people have to call me, they have to invite me when they see me, but I still have to put stuff out, and my network does all the work for me, okay? And then essentially as a projector, I can't create invites. So when I do what is for me and what I love, I'm a magnet. I'm the strongest magnet, and that's like quantum physics. It's like people naturally come in, and the others who are around fall off. And forever, I tried to save everyone, and then I realized, oh, when this person comes in, that person falls off. But as time went on, the more people came in, and the people that fell off, the people coming in kept being truer and truer and truer, okay? And then in metaphysics in general, this is really cool because astrology tells you about your past life and all your gifts and how to focus it in this lifetime. And if you want a specific video of that, go to the description box below. I have a masterclass in my school community called ENOCH, okay? And then numerology, we have actually masterclasses in all these on ENOCH. But numerology essentially shows you your life path and how you walk through life and where you start and where you finish. And then the pinnacles are all the milestones in between, okay? And then even with astrology, you have your south node, which is your past life, your north node, your destiny, your Mars is your career, your Venus is your love and how you manifest, Mercury is how you communicate, how your body and mind communicates, Jupiter is what expands you, Pluto is what you have to die and rebirth in a cycle to continually grow and evolve. And I think I pretty much hit all of them. Neptune is your intuitive downloads, your mysticism. Uranus is your ability to be unpredictable. And then Saturn is your karmic lesson that you came to learn here in this lifetime. And then your moon is your emotions. Your sun is your ego. And then your midheaven is how people view you as a career person. And your rising sign is the mask that people view you as in reality. Boom. Okay. And then human design essentially shows you how to operate in reality. As a projector, I can't initiate, I have to wait. But I don't just sit here and wait. I do stuff that I love. I get curious, and through curiosity, essentially what I do is just aimlessly start creating and following that. And then as my own type of visionary that I am, is I aimlessly create without putting any definition to it. And then when I hit a certain point, I stop and I'm like, oh, this is what we created. Some things fall off and then it all unifies. And from there, I can get specific and zero it in to roll it out. Once I roll it out, I gotta wait and rest, relax, do fun stuff, and then everything solves itself. And everybody comes in naturally. That's what I learned with human design. That's what you can too. And all that, like I said, is on ENOCH. Check the description box below. It's a free school community. Those courses are $99. And that is literally like a gold mine for 8 years of knowledge put into about a 2-hour video that walks you through it all, okay? So then from here, we're gonna go down into unifying self through. And this is once you understand, okay, so on the path to unlocking authenticity, you go into metaphysics. When you learn astrology, numerology, and human design in that order, I think is most useful. Then you start to identify the self and get to work with the self. Then you have to unify them all together, okay? And what you do to unify them is there's 3 aspects. You have your shadow, your ego, and your nervous system. And these are 3 very unique things that I think people cluster, but you have to isolate them, okay? So essentially, as a Pisces sun and moon and my 12th house Lilith in Sagittarius in the house of Pisces and a south node in Cancer, I was an escapist. Escapism is definitely one of my shadows. And essentially, I had escaped from things that were for me that would have helped me because I was scared and I didn't know they were right. And essentially would self-sabotage my life. And I saw this pattern and I was like, okay, we got to heal this. And we did through plant medicine and all these other somatics and RTT, hypnosis, EMDR, and all these different systems. And as I did that, my shadow that was self-sabotaging and debilitating me became my greatest gift. And that is what people magnetically attract to me for, is to teach them sovereignty. I've unlocked the frequency of sovereignty, which is my shadow integrated that creates a magnet. And if people are looking for an exit out of their life or to escape a life they don't want to live and create a lifestyle that they get to monetize doing what they want every day, they land in my personal brand Accelerator, which is exactly for this. And this is the process we walk people through, right? And it's so cool because I now help people escape the lives they don't want and create the life they're willing to live and came here to live. See how that works? And that was, shadow work was the hardest. It essentially started with plant medicine and then would go through Changa. So I started with sassafras, psilocybin, then went to Changa, which is a smokable form of ayahuasca. It's about 15 minutes, very cerebral, very visual. And then I finished that cycle with drinking ayahuasca in Costa Rica, which was very sensorial based and in my body. And that unlocked everything for me, okay? And I even have a ebook called The Sexy Moron that walks you through the shadow integration, the ego integration, and the nervous system growth and expansion and regulation, which we're covering in this section, okay? So next was the ego integration. And it's like this ego is this thing that wants to protect us and serve us. And essentially what it doesn't like is change, right? Because essentially our brains map out all these points, and that is what we understand as a cycle. Because it kind of starts like this. It's all over the place and it's a pattern. And that's when we're stressed out and we're like, I don't know what's going on, but I need to change. And it's like whenever we do that, our brain is syncing all these points around us to create unity from them, where it's like, okay, I got the pattern. And then we have that aha moment, right? So anytime we change something, our ego's like, no, 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 don't do that. Please don't do that. And we're like, but I have to. It's causing me distress, disease, chronic illness, and all this other shit. It's not for me. It was for me at one time, but I needed to grow. And then when you make the choice to grow, this is where your ego is like, oh, this is unknown. I don't want to do it. And you have to have a strong nervous system to get through it. Because whenever you make a big life change, like when I jumped from nursing into entrepreneurship, my body was like, or my body was telling me, yes, it healed itself right away, right, with that switch. But my mind was like scarce based. It was like, are you really going to do this? What about money? What about this? What about that? That's the ego chattering. And I remember I had no nervous system skills or knowledge then, but now I have such a nervous system tool belt. But whenever to hit the zone of possibility, you have to be willing to hold the tension, and you hold the tension through your nervous system. And it is literally like when you make that change and your ego is just like, you got to take a deep breath. You got to exhale. And as you feel relaxed, you're going to open up the space of what you can hold. And we start like this, and we can expand to this. And when your vision is so big, you got to be out here. You can't catch that vision like this, right? But the process is first, you got to integrate your ego. Well, first, you got to go through shadow healing. And then shadow healing activates the ego, right? And then the ego starts chattering. But once you integrate the ego, it's very simple. You just got to put it to work. It literally just wants to serve you. So let it. And it's as simple as like, I think of my ego like Siri. So we got to cover up Siri so she doesn't start talking. But it's like, instead of, hey, what I just said so my phone doesn't go off, it's like, hey, ego, I see you here wanting to serve me. Figure out what I'm having for dinner tonight. Figure out what I'm going to wear out today. Figure out where Oscar and I are going to go on a hike today. And it literally goes out. That voice that's chattering disappears, and it goes, finds it, and it'll literally bring it back to me and be like, here you go. And I'm like, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And that's how you endlessly make your ego your servant, and it loves to serve you. That's what it's there for. But it's not really serving you if it's blocking all the things that you want to do because it's afraid of the unknown, right? So then nervous system comes in here, and it's like, this is kind of a cycle. It's not psycho. You feel psycho going through it, but it's like shadow integration is the first step, which unlocks the ego and makes it chatter. And then you have to extend or expand and regulate the nervous system through different levels. And the nervous system regulation started first with plant medicine. I'd have these dope journeys, and then I'd have to regulate after because it was kind of like this. And I'm like, ugh. And then that opened up the door to going to yoga teacher training, which I'd teach yoga. And I started with foundations and then essentially into hatha. And then was like, all right, I'm done with this. I learned enough. And it was fun. And I still do yoga, but I don't feel called to teach it anymore, right? It was a tool that I learned to help regulate my nervous system. And I mastered it in teaching it. And then next thing you know, that would open up the door to cold plunging at Woodside in Kansas City. That's actually why I taught yoga, was to have access to cold plunging. And then cold plunging was so hard and I hated it, but I felt my nervous system expand like crazy. Then ended up moving to Austin, Texas, couldn't afford cold plunging. So I was like, we'll figure it out. Ended up finding Sananga. And it's like a cold plunge for your eye, and it burns. It burns. I did a medium dose, and I haven't done the hottest yet because that'll be the next nervous system integration and expansion. But I did 21 days sitting with Sananga back to back to back to back. And it just made me be able to sit down, be still, be sovereign. And everything I was needing to do, I was able to do with a little 30-second burn to my eye every day. And then it brought up all this deep stuff within me and taught me to step into emotional mastery, which has been the process that I've been doing, because I do believe emotions are going to be the next currency in this world once money becomes irrelevant, because everybody feels emotions in abundance of them. But as an artist, as an entrepreneur, these emotions used to debilitate me. And now I use them to alchemize and essentially build different stuff through different mediums, whether it be websites, landers, video projects, photo shoots, intuitive ideas, innovative ideas, futuristic ideas. Like everything I do comes from essentially all these emotions that I feel on my channel. And I used to let them hit me and debilitate me. But now, like for instance, when anger comes in, I know to send it down to my root, like Hape, which is another one for the nervous system. And I can hold it there. And when somebody's trying to piss me off or anger me, I'm looking at them and I'm like, I'm not fucking moving. Keep going. Wear yourself out. And then when you're ready, I'll speak. And it's so crazy how that works. But you got to have the integrated shadow, the integrated ego, and a regulated nervous system for that to happen. And it also tells me when to speak, when not to speak. When I walk in rooms, people can spill my energy and I don't have to say anything or do anything. And they're like, who's that guy? He seems important. And then they'll naturally attract to me. Back to the beginning, right? So then once you unify the self through healing of the shadow, ego, both integration, and then nervous system regulation. That is the true understanding of self in this moment, okay? Which will then lead you to past life recall. And past life recall is honestly one of my favorite things. I carry the gifts of the Akashics, and I've had it my whole life, but it was this past year that I truly understood how to use it. Once I started playing with all the past lives and stuff, it essentially taught me, it kind of came in at once. Like my most recent past life came in first, and then that one was the door that opened up everything to the soul. From there, I was able to identify my past 12 past lives. And I know I'm on my 13th human life, and those are human lives. And I've been able to recover one animal life and one insect life. And everything else in between, I don't really know a way to find them. And what I find out here when I recover all my past lives is that we actually live lives in twos. So we have two biblical lives, and one starts it, one's finish it. And this is the cycle of all lives. We start something in life, and then we complete it in the next life. So we're endlessly creating and completing our own life cycles. And I went through biblical lives, two king lives or two pharaoh lives in Egypt, and then two like Buddhist life essentially as like spiritual teachers, and then I had two religious lives as these priests, and two architectural lives, and then two scientist lives, and now I'm in a essentially it's just like these two cycles through time, like right from the beginning of time, the first people to walk this earth, to current reality. And this is my 13th life, where I have to unify all 12 lives and archetypes into one. Instead of honoring one by one, you have to honor all 12 together, and they work really well together when you unify them. And then once you unify all aspects of self, that leads you to self-expression and self-actualization, which is Maslow's hierarchy. And this is where authenticity finally works for you, and it makes you magnetic as fuck through quantum physics, right? And it's like if you were to put these biofeedback devices on me, I feel so authentic to self. I'm able to express myself clearly, authentically. And it doesn't matter what I say, I believe it. And even if people don't believe it, I've been through the journey of self-doubt. That's where my Saturn is in the first house in Aquarius. Self-doubt for being different. But look at what I am now, and look at how I'm operating through it, because I've self-actualized and I'm fully able to express myself without doubting myself, because I know who I am, and I know that I'm a prophet, and I know I'm here to teach people sovereignty, and I've unlocked the frequency to sovereignty. And that is how you get there, is through authenticity. So if you want to learn how to be authentic in this lifetime, be sure to join my school community called ENOCH. We have tons of free resources in there, paid masterclasses. And if you want to be one of the 12 people who I'm building a personal brand with, join my personal brand Accelerator by Chris. The link for that is below as well. It is the dopest offer on the internet. And if you're somebody and one of these 12 people who want to create an impact in the world through conscious creation, these containers are for you. Start in ENOCH, finish at the personal brand Accelerator. And beyond that, I got some more surprises for you. If I created a shift in you in this video, be sure to subscribe, comment below, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out, and thank you.